Hey guys, so I wanted to quickly talk about because I watched this old video of Kyle Kalinske and he was talking about his version of direct democracy. Now, I don't really have a problem with Kyle's version of direct democracy, but the problem with direct democracy under the US system is that the US system is actually a centralized state. It's a centralized statist government. So federalism has the three branches of government: the federal government, the state government, and the local government. Right now, the federal government has full power. The federal government basically has power over all 330 million Americans. That's centralization. When a government has that much power over hundreds of millions of people, that's centralization. At the end of the day, no matter what the local and state government says, it has to make sure that it follows the US Constitution, which is federal law. Every law that's made in the state and local legislature is done under the guise of the Constitution. Now, let's say we get a direct democracy within the United States. That's all fine and dandy, but here comes the problem of one, it has to follow the Constitution. It has to follow the already established. Well, actually, no, that's not true. It doesn't have to. It does not have to follow the established Supreme Court justice rulings because, as long as you make an amendment, then that amendment overrides that ruling due to the balance of powers, or the separation of powers, I mean. So, if you do get a constitutional direct democracy, let's even say we get rid of the Senate and the House of Representatives and we replace it with direct democracy. Now you're up against a federal government, particularly an executive branch that is beholden to his donors, hence the ruling class. So no matter what type of policy you put in, essentially you just made the president of the United States a dictator. And with the powers that be, basically they're going to put their money and their influence onto the president. The president will go against all legislation made by the people. The Supreme Court, I mean, this should not come to a surprise to any of you, but the Supreme Court definitely follows orders from a higher echelon of the hierarchy. What people don't seem to understand is that we do not own our own government as it stands right now. So all of this is just high in the pie sky theory land. Direct democracy cannot come to the United States because we do not own our own government. And considering the fact that everybody is either complacent or decides to divide themselves, have class division and divide themselves through race, economics, political beliefs, creed, religion. What you now have is a successful corporate oligarchy who has divided the people while they run through the back door with all the money. This is uh, not conspiratorial. The word conspiracy theory was concocted by the CIA to begin with. So all you have to do is follow the money. All you have to do is take the time to do the research. You'll understand that the powers within government, they are owned and controlled by private entities. So the only way direct democracy is only going to work is without a state, without um, without the means of production being privately owned for profit as the main economic system. I think it is best. I mean, if you're talking about anybody who's talking about a stateless democracy is talking about socialism, because you don't hear advocates of capitalism talking about democracy unless they believe in a republic, which a republic is not a democracy, it's an oligarchy. A republic and a representative democracy is basically a rulership, a ruling class system. The House of Representatives and the Senate is not beholden to us. They're beholden to the people who have gotten them elected. They're beholden to their donors and their special interests. They are not going to. They're making decisions our without our say, without our permission, without our knowledge. This is why republics have been historically authoritarian, because essentially you're just creating an oligarchy where people, quote unquote, vote in these, quote unquote, representatives. They're not representing nobody except their special interests. So yeah, their representatives are right. They're just not representing you. They're representing the club and the people who really make the decisions in this country. This is why direct democracy, stateless democracy, this is the only system of no rulers. If you don't have a state, if you don't have 12 corporations owning and controlling the means of production and all the land and its resources, then you do not have a ruling class. You simply have the people holding the land in common and making sure that basic human rights, establishing positive and negative rights, become a thing. So yes, the direct democracy can't. Democracy is a word and a philosophy that the American people in general, they have been purposely misled, misguided by the government to not really fully understand what democracy is. When I say direct democracy, I just mean democracy, which just means every person, every individual has one say and one vote. Everybody is the authority. And since everybody is the authority, nobody is the authority. The only other option besides direct democracy, and when you hear the arguments against democracy, which is mob rule, I mean, it doesn't have to be mob rule as long as you establish negative and positive rights and make sure that no decision making can be done through force or coercion. We're talking about a system that is voluntary, a system where we don't force people or hurt people who haven't harmed others to get things done. There's no need for that. History has shown there's no need for that. And I think if we want a true direct democracy with no rulers, it has to be everybody has one say and one vote. And there are many ways we can do this. Delegation, of course. Delegation, and of course with the technology we have now, along with the examples. My main example Just one of the few examples is the Haudenosaunee, who existed for hundreds of years. They had a stateless democracy. They were able to function for hundreds of years. They only stopped, they exist, but they only stopped having the power they had because of imperialism and because of outside forces. Europe, basically. Another example is Rojava, Syria, who practices democratic confederalism, which is a bottom-up system where it goes from neighborhoods to local councils to regional councils and so on. How big they want to make that governing body is up to them, but the idea is it goes from bottom to top. There are no rulers. All the decision making comes right from the people first to the delegates, and those delegates within those higher echelons of government. But there are no rulers. There are many ways we can do this. But that is my take on what democracy is, what true democracy is. And, I just hopefully I've been able to convince you guys, to get a little bit of anarchy in you.